Moving on to Iran, President Trump is set to announce his decision regarding the Iran nuclear agreement later today. Reports indicate that he will not recertify the deal, punting the next steps to Congress while not necessarily pulling the country out entirely. Oh, this is like a theme for him. It comes as the White House released the administration's new strategy towards Iran earlier this morning, which takes a very tough approach toward Iran's Revolutionary Guard, the IRGC. Here is Chief of Staff John Kelly yesterday about the president's plan for Iran.
Clearly, the president has he's deep in thought, to say the least, about the way ahead in Iran. And once again, he's not the only one that thinks that maybe the deal that was struck under the previous administration is a deal that, in the long term, even in the medium and long term, will protect America.
Yeah, Richard, again, we talked about this repeatedly. It was a very bad deal. I thought it was a very bad deal. I thought the Obama administration was too desperate to strike that deal, but they struck that deal. And it was front-loaded to get money into the hands of the Iranians, so future presidents couldn't do effectively what Donald Trump's trying to do now. And people like me who even oppose the deal would say, why are you going to get out of the deal now that we've given them all the money and all the incentives were front-loaded? It makes no sense. So we give them all the money, we front-load everything, and then we say, okay, there's no deal anymore. You guys go off and make your nukes.
Well, the answer is we're not going to go out of the deal. It's not just the fact that we gave them all the money. We don't need a second nuclear crisis this week. The inbox is plenty full already. We'd isolate ourselves rather than Iran. The rest of the world is not going to
They'll stay in it.
Absolutely. Plus, in the short run, whatever the flaws of the deal, most of the flaws in the deal are over time. That a lot of the limits on Iran expire, say on centrifuges in 8 years, on enriched uranium in 13 more years. But for the near term, it parks the problem. We have real long-term problems. And what's so interesting about what the administration is going to announce today is it barely mentions the deal. After all this noise and all that, 95% of what they're talking about is everything else Iran is doing in the region. All the things that they're doing to destabilize the Middle East.
For us to mention here that even in real time, the Obama administration was saying the Iranians are bad actors. This is not about stopping the Iranians from being bad actors.
Right.
This is about slowing down their nuclear
It was
program.
a narrow deal. It didn't claim to solve the problem. It parked it. Big problems down the road, and I agree with you. I thought many of the limits on Iran, the durations were way too short. I would have made them open-ended. I think we had a lot more leverage than we used. We were too anxious to the deal. But also the deal was narrow. That's not a criticism. That's just an observation. All the arms-controlled deals with the Soviets were always narrow.
Well, exactly. No, I'm not criticizing. Yep. What I'm saying is, for the administration to come out and say, well, they're bad actors, so we need to go ahead and scrap the deal. No, at the time the deal was done, we understood this wasn't about them being bad actors. This was about limiting, slowing down a nuclear deal.
Right, and I think what it is Donald Trump found it distasteful to certify that the Iranians are in compliance with the deal, even though awkwardly they happen to be.
I have a question.
It's the one thing they're doing where they're actually in compliance.
National Security Advisor McMaster, Secretary of Defense Mattis, Secretary of State Tillerson, all have said we would not decertify this deal. Donald Trump, 11 months ago, was negotiating leases on Park Avenue. What does he know that they don't know after a collective 100 years in the military?
Well, I think Richard brings up a good point, Jonathan. There's so many things that Donald Trump does, which is just for PR, for his 32%.
There you go. For his literal moment speaking.
So we don't know how this ends. This sounds an awful lot like the transgender ban in the military, something that he puts out there against the advice of all of his military experts. He's doing the same thing here, and we don't know where this ends up. This could be yet another PR play on Friday.
It could be, or again, he could actually tear this thing up eventually. I do not rule that out, neither do his advisors. I was talking to a senior official last night who said, you know what, yes, the speech is written, he's going to refuse to certify tomorrow. We've got this plan with Congress, Cotton and Corker are going to do this legislation, but he hates this deal. There's this thing in his gut that he thinks this is terrible, he wants to tear it up. And so, again, I don't rule out, and neither do they, in 2 months Trump just going, well, you know what, to hell with this thing. Because he's done it. Again, we saw this last night with the cost-sharing payments. I think he's probably going to do it with NAFTA. I think KORUS, the Korean trade deal, is heading on that trajectory. I think we're seeing a lot of these things coming up against Trump's gut instincts.
You know, what's interesting, Richard, is during the campaign, I remember hearing Trump saying, well, it's a deal. We have the deal. We got to try to work around the deal. I mean, I actually heard him saying that during the campaign. And if you talk to all of his military people, and you talk to others, it makes no sense to tear up the deal, because like you said, we won't be isolating Iran. We will be isolating the United States.
Look, exactly. But this is a pattern here. We talked about it with healthcare. We talked about it with DACA. He got out of TPP, got out of the Paris Climate Agreement. You know, I think there's now a doctrine, and it's the withdrawal doctrine.
Stupid doctrine?
And
I mean, listen, there are parallels with Paris.
Exactly.
I mean, in that, what did we get by getting out of Paris? Nothing but a headline for his 32%, and nothing but consternation from across the globe. Those guidelines were voluntary. We didn't push back against environmentalism. We pushed back against our best chance to slow down China's carbon emissions, to slow down India's carbon emissions.
Absolutely.
We're hitting our goals.
Exactly. And if we don't like our goals, we can change our goals under the Paris. It ought to be the form of multilateralism
but
this administration
this is
loves.
one area, though, that America's doing well on.
Oh, absolutely.
We have hit our goals. So why don't we use Paris as a chance to move other people our way?
Because that would somehow suggest that climate change might be real, which is something that certain people don't want to admit.
Well, therein lies the real problem. I was thinking, Jonathan, you alluded to it. If you take Paris, if you take the Iran Accord, if you take DACA, if you take TPP, if you take NAFTA, to a certain extent NAFTA, Donald Trump is trying to do the impossible. He's trying to erase history. He's trying to erase anything that mentions the name Barack Obama. He has an obsession with people like Barack Obama, who gets more headlines, who gets more appreciation in his mind than Donald Trump does. And he's trying to erase it.
And there's so many themes you're hitting there.
I also think it's more than that. I also think that he can't. It's this idea of sovereignty and nationalism. We can't be part of something larger. It's what I call, again.
Does he understand that, though?
Well, because there's no alternative. This is you know, want a strategy. This is called leaving from behind.
32%.
This is basically getting out of all these things.
To his base, it's not what he understands or what he doesn't understand, because he doesn't care about policy. Tom Barrack, his close friend, his longtime confidant, said it in the Washington Post, Mika, a couple days ago, that he had been trying to explain to Donald, his long-term friend. You don't have to continue to kowtow to this 32%. They are not your base. The American people are your base. Play to the American people. But everything he does, whether it's Paris, whether it's Iran, whether it's the way he's going about with Obamacare, it's playing to his 32%, which is why he will stay there.
Well, or as Richard called it, the withdrawal doctrine. That seems to make sense on every level.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.